Om Yo Brahmanand Vidadati Purvam Yo Vai Vedamscha Prahinohi Tasmai Tanhadeva Atmabudhi Prakasha Mumukshurvai Sharna Braham Rapaje Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. That indivisible, divine, all-pervasive presence, out of which sprang the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, at the beginning of a cosmic cycle, and who transmitted the Vedas and the Upanishads to Lord Brahma, who is an eternal bridge to immortality, who is partless, faultless, actionless, and divine, who resembles fire that has consumed all its fuel. I go for refuge to that Supreme Brahman, whose radiant light of consciousness turns the attention of mankind to the Atman, the indivisible self within all. Om, peace, peace, peace. And there shines Brahman. May that Brahman protect us. May that Brahman sustain us. And may that Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. Free us from obstacles and impediments and reveal to us the essence of the teachings. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. We are starting into a third class in this particular series that courts the teachings of bringing together the twin ideals abiding within us so that we can realize that singular Brahman. That is, it's allotted for in all the darshanas of India is that this primal two-ness is Shiva and Shakti, or Brahman and Shakti, if you're looking at it more from the standpoint of Vedanta, which Sri Krishna talked about that, fire in its power to burn, and water in its wetness, and so forth. Those are good sayings about the ultimate unity of Brahman and Shakti, or Shiva and Shakti. We like to put it in terms of Shiva and Shakti when we go towards the Tantra, but also when we go towards the art of spiritual practice called sadhana, or discipline. Vedanta doesn't have a lot of methods. It is itself the path and the goal at one. It's the statement of truth on a non-dual level, although it does also lend itself towards teachings of a qualified non-dual nature, and also dualism is found in the Upanishads and in the Gita, for instance, in those great scriptures. But the teaching of Shiva and Shakti then quite often is more pertinent to individuals bringing together their power, and that's called yoga, basically. The first thing that yoga teachers want the aspirant to do is to store up their power. And that can be done by yamas and niyamas, which are specifically cited in yoga, of which moderation of sensual appetites is one of the strong ones, because that will, if you don't have all your energy going out all the time, I'm not mentioning any 7 billion names here, but if you have your energy going out all the time, then it fritters it away. Sometimes I tell that story of being in a vast crowd after I offered some music at the Kasipur Garden House for Kalpataru Day in Calcutta one year, one January 1st. And Uh, there was a mixture of Ramakrishna order swamis and devotees of and admirers of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. Thousands of them there. And out of this crowd came this short Ramakrishna order swami whom I'd never met, and said, "I have your power." And he pulled out from his cloth and he showed me a picture of Ramakrishna and gave it to me and disappeared back in the crowd before I could even say thank you. So that power was exemplified in Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. That is, he showed us how to store up this power, that energy from senses. I mean, it can be called prana if you know about prana. It can just be called what gets spent through the senses onto the objects. Vital power, sometimes it's called in English. They know about it. It's animating power. But it goes a lot deeper than just the body and the bloodstream and the lungs and the heart. We know already that when you're storing up your power, you want to balance your breath. That's a kind of moderation of too much breathing or too little breathing. People come to yoga in those two conditions, basically. They breathe too much, means they're restless, or they breathe too little, which means they're not opened up yet. So you have to balance their breath. Balance is always the great thing in yoga. And then you can store up the essence of things. If you're constantly outward going, as the senses are always outward going, the Upanishad says, that's Mundaka Upanishad, basically. The senses are defective by nature because they're always outward going. So they're trying to bring this energy back in. And if you can do that with a consecrated partner, then or partnering, then that's called Shiva and Shakti in Tantra and in yoga too, basically, Kundalini yoga. You want to get together with a person of like mind that wants to realize his or her divine nature and is willing to spend time and energy, that energy that was outward spent, willing to renounce and detach and discriminate and discern and draw back all of this energy into the heart, they say, and then it can be stored up there. And the heart and mind are pretty much synonymous at that point. Um, Two different centers, Kundalini style, the Anahata and the Agya, but basically they're one and the same, Meta Kendra, one intelligence there and one love in a person who's united them. So that's what we've been going on about in the last two classes, last two Sundays, is this bringing together. There's a nice Sanskrit words you can use for it, Samara Sattva. We know the word sattva is already a matter of balance, and sama always means samadhi or all sorts of samatva. And basically, there's all sorts of words that begin with those four letters, which immediately convey to us this presence of peace or quietude or equilibrium or calmness, shanti. And so you put those two together, then you can see that that's a high ideal that these beings are, who are joining in sadhana together. And you might say that can be extended into a sangha plus its acharya, its guru. Basically, that's a kind of Shiva in the guru and Shakti and the sangha, and trying to bring that together for the good of everyone involved. Also, your own divine and feminine energies within you are a kind of Shiva Shakti. So men have some Shakti in them and women have some Shiva in them. So it's not like since they're like water and its wetness, so it's not like we're casting them asunder and different from each other. There are different characteristics and beautiful dynamics to both. And so that can be heralded and sung about and evinced and emulated. And the result will be this spiritual discipline that allows one to withdraw from things that are a waste of time and a waste of energy. Uh, and there's going to have to be that discernment in there because a lot of people don't know that They may be spinning their wheels on things that are constantly changing, never dependable, like shifting sand, and not fulfilling in the end. It's one of the great lessons is when you know that in the modes of action and inaction, which the two main modes everyone's involved in, is that when you're involved in the mode of action, that it's constantly bringing up these dualities of happiness and sorrow, or pleasure and pain. Those are the two first obstacles in yoga. Kleshas, they're called. So that's this pleasure and pain problem that's coming all the time. As Krishna says in the Gita, what's positive in the beginning often turns negative at the end, but what's negative in the beginning often will turn positive at the end. That's the old gold chain, iron chain problem. They both bind you, happiness and sorrow, because they're constantly playing back and forth with each other. So it should be obvious to most people who have grown up, who are more mature, more adult. Um, Only fools speak of those two things as desirable, Krishna says in the Gita. Children speak that way. But the adults who've grown up know that that's a lesson to be learned, and that there's a way of rising above these deluding pairs of opposites. I got an email just today from one of my students saying that, well, there's posters all over about this big guru that's coming to town. You can't walk one block without everything plastered with his name on it. And he has a title for his name about it has to do with happiness, mentioning names or slogans here. And then my student said, it's funny how these teachers with such big followings are always preaching happiness, but in our tradition, we know that happiness leads to sorrow and then back to happiness again. That's called dvandva mohena, and so we're not preaching that. We're not teaching that. We're not following that. We're following the way of discrimination and love, as described by Swami Vivekananda when he was here, a true world teacher. So that was just today I received this email. So whatever the case may be then in this teaching of Samara Sattva, we stopped last week because we had looked at a bunch of beautiful concepts or precepts, maybe called axioms or principles, truisms, Advaitic truths that had to do with the real bliss of Brahman, which was beyond pleasure and pain, beyond sorrow and happiness. When you get to this bliss, it's the peace that passes all understanding, and all the dualities begin to fall off of you like unwanted things. And it had these little pairs of stickers on you. They were sticking to you because you had sorrow, you had attachment to pleasure and pain. But as soon as you reach that peace, then they all start falling off you naturally, and they're not attached to you anymore. That's what happens to a person who becomes non-dual in nature and decides not to court these dualities, especially the ones that are pain-bearing, quote, father of yoga, unquote, pain-bearing obstacles. So if pain still keeps coming to you, then you're going to have to probably look back and find out where that pleasure is that's giving rise to it and renounce that pleasure. That is, detach yourself from that. Detach yourself from both. Yesterday's satsang, I told everyone I woke up in the morning yesterday saying, few only know the truth. The rest will hate and laugh at you, O great one. But pay no heed. Go thou, the free, from place to place, and help them out of darkness, Maya's veils. Without the fear of pain or search for pleasure, go beyond them both, sannyas and bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. That's one of those penultimate verse in Swami Vivekananda's Song of the Sannyasin. Go thou the free from place to place. So help them out of this pleasure and pain problem they're having. Point out to them that detach from both of those. You say, well, I'm not going to give rise to pleasure anymore, and then, pain still comes because it's, still there in their karma. Or um, I'm not going to be amenable to pain anymore, but pleasure is still enticing you. So to rise above them both and to come to this peace that passes all understanding and have that bliss of Brahman that is there at the foundation of the teachings of the Vedanta and the ancient seers of India. And as we were doing that, we looked through here, we came upon Upasana Jnana. I mean, we can look at this really quickly again, just to point out a few of the practices that and observances and axioms that this divine couple, Shiva and Shakti, are engaging in. You saw them there, Svatantra Sattva Bhava and Tatastha Lakshana, and then Sandilya Vidya, Sarvadarshanachara, Brahmanusandana, Brahmabhyasa, and at the sides, Pragyanagana, that is, knowing that Brahman is an indeterminable mass of pure conscious awareness, and the other side, Upasana Jnana. So when we went through all of these, and I won't go through them all for you again, you can look back on last week's class, we courted Upasana Jnana rather closely of those, and that's where we came up with this chart. Not going to go through it again with you, but we did say that we'd start with it this week at the end of last week's class, and that was down here. We wanted to kind of do a summation of what Upasana and Vipassana is. We've already gone through it all. Again, look back on last week's class if you can, or your notes, or your divine memory. If you can hold so much in your memory, that's a very good thing. And you see under the two headings of Upasana and Vipassana then, there's this formless awareness on one side and its dynamic power on the other. So I'm coupling up here, talking about divine coupling. I'm coupling up here that Brahma Shakti tradition in Vedanta, or that Shiva Shakti way of thinking of things in Tantra and in yoga, the formless awareness and its dynamic power. That's evinced here by Lord Shiva holding Divine Mother hand, you see. And so you can see that they've gotten into union about these important things. This is what we need to be about, realizing in the precious time allotted to us in the embodied condition on earth. You know what most people are doing in the embodied condition on earth. Some of it's not so fair, not so just, not so happy, not so balanced. But these particular beings who are called spiritual aspirants have gotten together and they want to place their combined energies after they've stored them up and the during the process of storing them up too. And I see that everyone just all of a sudden just arrive at a perfect stored up collection or possession of their energies. They have to get some first, and then they have to pick and choose at other times to bring back more of their energy over time so they can become a complete, full, and whole person. The holism of Western, if American, for instance, is not doing that. It's just the body and its health is called holism. But in spiritual life, holism is not just the body and its health, but the energy that supplies the body with its flow and the senses with their flow. And beyond that, the mind that's pure or not, that either crimps the prana from getting into the senses and deters it from spiritual life, or opens up the flow of Kundalini power and helps it rise amongst and above the three lower centers. We said that yesterday at satsang, right? Because she said, well, the eyes are right there in the center of the forehead. How come they're always looking down to the three lower centers? They should be looking right there through the third eye because it's right there between them. But man's senses, their eyes are always looking down to eating, drinking, and procreation. And when the eyes are really very highly situated. So if we're using the senses right, he means then that we should be taking that power up these centers and taking our attention off these mundane, conventional, and sometimes deluding ways of living and become enlightened and in this very lifetime. Open our higher centers, our heart, our throat, our third eye are basically just ways of saying our love for God, our ability to speak about the wisdom that the Lord um, possesses and transmits to us. And then the third eye, the ability to come to a unified position and close the two eyes and look inward with this third eye to the Atman, as I just chanted, right? I take refuge in Brahman, in that Brahman, whose great light of consciousness attracts mankind to the Atman, the indivisible self within all beings. Beautiful sloka from the Upanishads. So, formless awareness together with its dynamic power, quite often people are thinking of that as two different things. And in philosophy, that error is made too. I think I'll just go to the formless and forget all this. Meantime, all this is keeping you from getting to that with a capital T. Or maybe I'll just concentrate on the dynamic power, and that'll be enough for me, and I won't ever court that highest position of non-duality, which is my very nature, which is the Atman, the Paramatman. And so the Paramatman and the Jivatman will never be seen as one. They'll always have a separation between them. The hailstone will never reach the ocean as it falls towards it. It will never merge there because all I'm doing is just running my wheels with prana and some Shakti that's without its Shiva, you see. So basically, that's got to be said about this chart. You see, Upasana was Lord Brahma, meditating, you get close to him, getting close to Brahman. And Vipassana was getting far away, the form begins to disappear, the breathing evens out, and you're having an inner vision of that light of Brahman. So put in terms of this Samara Sattva we're talking about then, we find out that the Upasana is bringing forth all the elements and dynamism of Shakti for our use, for our purification. And Vipassana then will give us that open channel to formless meditation, which is one of the facets of all forms of Buddhism, Zen and Tibetan too. That meditation is very, very much the goal of the higher mind. So basically, we went through all of this. Now let's get to these final conclusions. This will kind of usher us into this class. Get to the final conclusions about Vipassana and Upasana. So Vipassana first, seen as a science of mind, quote, because it's often called that by Vipassana people. Vipassana is an ancient Indian meditation technique that aids the aspirant after truth in perceiving body, mind, and universe as they truly are. Conceived by Lord Buddha, it further enables the seeker to expand the mind's compassion for embodied beings by recognizing the suffering-ridden nature of the world. And so the first noble truth is there is suffering. You cannot really be a Buddhist until you understand that and accept it. That is, let's go back to what I was just saying. Let's say I have a problem with pleasure and pain. Let's see. The pain's a teacher, the pleasure's a sleeper, you see. So basically, I'm not getting rid of that duality, so I'll never know that that suffering is part of the universe. I'm getting my pain and pleasure from the universe, from the senses, from the objects. So I can never get to this transcendental position they talk about, whether it's Advaita Vedanta or whether it's Zen Buddhism, the highest meditation, samadhi or satori. I can never get to it because I haven't accepted that the universe is full of suffering. The suffering of this world has gotten into my very bones. Sounds like Lord Buddha, doesn't it? But it's actually Holy Mother that said that. Gotten into the very marrow of my bones. So accept it, be done with it. If they will accept it, then I'm giving up happiness, but you're also giving up pain. So how can I balance that? I have to give up happiness and then I'll give up sorrow at the same time. Can I do that? Well, yes, because you're gaining bliss. You have to go the full distance. If you get rid of the dualities, you get oneness. And it's true with all dualities. So in that way, you have to think about this, rationale, do your manana, and after you accept the suffering-ridden existence of the universe, regale in the transcendence of it. Now I'm free, right? That freedom has its own bliss to confer. These are all words of freedom on this chart we looked at, having to do with moksha or mukti or kaivalya or satori or samadhi. All of those words are spoken by people who have reached this non-dual liberation, actually called liberation. So there you have a sort of synopsis of Vipassana. How about a synopsis of Upasana at the end of this chart? Upasana means to draw near to reality. Properly implemented into daily practice, it prepares the mind for attaining the supreme goal of moksha, liberation. As it commences under proper guidance, it destroys negative tendencies and brings clarity of mind. Utilizing it, meditation and the meditator become unified, leading to realization of, quote, that thou art, tatvamasi, one of the great Mahavakyas in Vedanta. So you can see then, if you go back to the title of this chart, it's an intended or intentional natural complement of Indian philosophy to give us both of these, Upasana and Vipassana. They all came out of India because Buddha came out of India. And if that's the case, then we also then want to look at this formless awareness and this dynamic power that is Shiva and Shakti, and bring them together inside of us and draw up this power, store it up, and use it for the goal of human existence, which is to realize your true nature as being ever free and never bound. That we took a little extra time to complete this chart from this chart, Upasana and Vipassana. Now, over here, we had the second word, Tatakshalakshana, which is a very interesting word that brings in a lot of teachings. And I think we can go through that now, because I had a separate chart on it, just like I had a separate chart created last week for Upasana and Vipassana. Then I also created this separate chart for Tatakshalakshana. And here it is. Now, the whole idea of this chart, which I flashed, I think, 2 Sundays ago, is that these great souls are at the top of the mountain, and they'll help us up. So you see that's the central image here, is being helped up because there are 2 other mountain climbers that aren't yet in a good position to be helped. You see the 2 other ovals at the bottom. This one's just hanging there, and this one's lost his hold completely. So basically that evinces or symbolizes that there are people that are trying to get to the summit of realization, and they're coming up with all kinds of obstacles, karmas, samskaras from past lifetimes, influence of the ancestors, attachment to the deluding pairs of opposites, non-acceptance of the role of suffering in life. The suffering is all of these things, which are always brought up in Indian philosophy again and again, are some of the reasons why they're stumbling and not being able to attain the crest and get to the peak of realization. And one of the words for that, as the subtitle evinces here, is avoiding false conclusions about Brahman. I'm also at the same time going to show this chart, and maybe we can look at it real quick, just for a few seconds, because we're going to go back to this chart, Tatakshalakshana. But you can see this, if you remember from the last 2 classes, this Shiva Shakti couple are trying to put their combined collected energy force towards these problems of life through these methods, which are the lightning bolts that are attacking the membrane of this. Like it's a big cloud you see in the mind. The mind's got all of these problems with karma, with its ancestors, with attachment to nature because of its attracting power, attachment to wealth and resources and land is in there, which is all connected with ancestors and so forth. So all of these 5 impediments that we've looked at already once or twice in this 2 classes we've had so far are there to consider. And Upasana, we already looked through that, is one of the ways in which they're going to get close to Brahman. Sit near to Brahman when you meditate. Um, one of my God blogs last week was subtitled, "Don't just sit to meditate, have meditation sit in you." Don't just sit to meditate. Oh, I'm going to go sit now. So it's like something you do once a day in your practice because your teacher told you to. And you sit there and you get up, and you sit there and you get up. But then that's a long way yet from letting meditation sit in you to that one uh, great realization you had that that I am the ever free soul. I never was bound to begin with, so I want to try and realize my ever free nature. At that moment, then you go beyond the limitations of the mind, and the mind starts thinking, "I am free. I am my Father one. Tat Tamasi. Pragyanam Brahma. The self is Brahman," and it has that one definitive realization, and has has it near to Brahman, as it sat near to Brahman, Upasana, that is near to Ishvara, near to the Guru, near to the Atman. You want to be as near to those eternal principles as you possibly can get and stay near to them. You don't then stand up, walk away from your meditation and leave Atman, Brahman, and Ishvara back in the altar room. See, you take them with you into life. So that's sitting in meditation all the time. So they said Swami Vivekananda was meditating whether he was coming, going, sitting, eating, sleeping. His mind was always on Brahman. So that's the kind of meditation you want. In other words, as Holy Mother said, don't just seek Brahman, see Brahman. When you see that Brahman's in everything and you accept that, that's the next level of suffering is. See, suffering is, there's a cause for it. All of a sudden, there's a remedy for it. Well, that is a remedy for it. When you realize finally that that Brahman exists in everything, and I should stop seeking it because I've just seen it. You see, I don't need to seek anymore. My seeking has reached fruition finally, and I've reached the realization that all is Brahman. And then aham brahmasmi, I am Brahman. That would be a step further. So showing this really quickly because all of these practices were done by this, are being done by this couple. They're deciding to do this together. And they're putting all their combined energy, their stored up power from doing yoga together. And please don't mistake the word yoga for hatha here, but it's yoga of Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. What happened to those 4 yogas? Why, when we say yoga, are you reverting to a physical thing only? There are 4 great yogas taught by Sri Krishna in the Gita, realized anew by Swami Vivekananda in this age. Those are what we mean by yoga. So they have stored up their power by doing those 4 yogas. And when they have the power to practice these various things that their guru is telling them about. And we looked at all of those right here. They've stored up Dharna Shakti, they've stored up all these Shaktis here, and they've come into realization of their past lifetimes. They're remembering that they've lived before. They're remembering wisdom that they had accrued in previous lifetimes. Otherwise, they wouldn't be understanding what the teacher's saying in this lifetime. They've come close to the scriptures. They've increased their bhakti. They begin to love the Lord. All of the fruits of those 4 yogas begin to dawn on them. And that's proof enough for them that they're on the right path and closing in closely on the penultimate goal called Kaivalya, separation from everything that changes. I'm finally getting free from the changing, even if you want to call it the changing Brahman. And I'm seeing the one unchanging principle in everything that's stable, like bedrock, not like sand. And I see it as abiding in myself. not outside, not up, not outside, not down, within. It's within me. So that's where they're headed. So I bring it all back here because it's going to give a lot of contrast and help to us when we look at these false notions that the climber on this path, these two climbers together on this path, are trying to reach the summit where Ishvara, Guru, their own Atman, is trying to extend them a hand and draw them up. That's the whole purpose of this imagery here, which I always try and use as a combination. I like music, I like visuals, and I like Dharma teachings. And I like to put those three together to have the deepest effect on people if I can get their attention for an hour or two in their life. So in this case, what are the things that are keeping us from realizing this highest goal? Because it begins to sound like we're on our own way, isn't it? Like we're constantly short-circuiting our own progress, our own mechanisms. So the other basic practice like breathing and, Vipassana will teach you that, and meditating, on form like Upasana will teach you. We have these, great, use them. But then it begins to look like to us after a while that we're just chasing our own tail, is that we should just stop, cease, and be still and see ourselves as that. And even if it's to fake it, see, just assume the position. I think I'm going to, instead of assume the position that I'm worthless or that I've got so many imperfections I'll never reach the goal, or I'm a sinner, or whatever it is that they're telling you out there, I'm just going to see myself as that divine reality because the gurus have told me that there's no separation between us, between God and the living being, creature and creator, God and mankind, witness and nature. There's no separation between them. They're one thing. They're two things in one firmament. See, just like these two are sitting in one atmosphere, and they're one classroom, and they're one shrine room doing these practices. That's the oneness that's always there that's so hard to detect. So how many times did I breathe today? 400,000 or something. Last night, 260 some thousand. How many times did my eyes blink today? Or just last minute? Consciousness is as subtle as that. It's just right there, hiding in plain sight. And you just come to grips with it, find and say, I am that. And I may still have these apparent indiscrepancies, misunderstandings, and problems and shortcomings in me, but the ultimate truth is that I am Atma Brahma, this self is Brahman. It can never be separated. That can never be untrue. So there's a lot of untruths or half-truths that I'm telling myself, you see, in the meantime, that are short-circuiting my progress. I think I've said enough about that. Let's look at them. They're really wrong conclusions that Brahman undergoes transformation. So that's one of the things we're going to have to agree on with the realized seers like Sri Ramakrishna, Ramana Maharshi, and Shankara, and other truly great souls, that Brahman doesn't change. We just talked about change already. It's the changing Brahman, if I want to give it any credence at all. But I want to see the changeless reality and build my house on bedrock. So I'm going to have to give up this notion that Brahman goes through changes. So what can I substitute there? Nature goes through changes. How about Maya is ever changing? How about my mind is ever changing? Why all of a sudden, when you have one changeless reality underlying everything, do you place the blame on it rather than these three other things? Nature changes, Maya changes, mind changes. Brahman doesn't change. Let's repeat that together, and then let's believe it. And then let's stick with that as our credo. That's our new mantra. I've given you a non-dual mantra now. See. Brahma Parinama. Brahman doesn't change. Parinama, nature changes. Prakriti Parinama, nature changes. Manas Parinama, mind changes. So those are the culprits that are telling me that change is real, but change is not real because Brahman's the only reality and it's changeless. Immutable is the word in English that is the best intellectual word to use. It's immutable. Everything else is mutable. Mutation is inferred there. So Brahman doesn't mutate. It stays the same, pure, indivisible, integral, synthesized prajnanam Brahman, right? That that's one of those great words that we just looked at. It's pragya, prajnanam, or pragyagana. It's one indivisible mass of pure conscious awareness. You cannot find a separation in it. You can't find a limit to it, and you can't find a border to it. And that's the truth of existence. They call that the ground of existence. Meister Eckhart called it. So if these two beings, I'm putting these charts side by side quite a lot, but if these two beings are thinking that change is somehow real, then they haven't got their power stored up yet. And some of these things are going to keep plaguing them, like nature. They'll be attracted to the changes of nature or the changes in society or the changes in business or the changes in church and religion. Everyone's crowing, cackling like chickens about the changes in their particular areas, but nobody says one word about the changeless reality. Like hens cackling on the barnyard floor because of a hatching of a bunch of insects, a new hatching. Every walk of life in the world is doing that with their particular science or their particular path, cackling about it. But nobody ever shuts up and says, there's one Brahman and I am that. When they do, then you've got a Shankara, and then you've got a Ramana Maharshi, quiet, deep, composed, equanimous. And you'll have to go to them and ask them, how did you get like that? Well, because I realized at one point that Brahman is changeless. And I gave up all belief in anything that transforms. I gave up parinama and put in its place aparinama. I gave up the changing, and I'm a votary. I'm a devotee of the unchanging. Brahman is a cause of anything. That is wrong conclusions that Brahman is the cause of anything. That takes us to a little bit different slant on the same thing that we just said about transformation. So basically, we're thinking it in terms of cause and effect. Nature caused everything, and nature caused you too, because you think you're the body. But basically, nature is in you. You're not in nature. So as Vivekananda so nicely put it, you had vision of everything that was going to happen from the mind out to the senses, out to the elements, and out to the body. Before you were even born, you were the witness of that. And then you got into it and you forgot you were the witness of it, and you begin to identify with mind, energy, matter, bodies, and so forth. And then you got fooled. And see here, this quote here, maybe we can read that now. The dual-witted man sees himself as the body. The book-learned man thinks of himself as a combination of body and brain. But the seer, possessed of realization through discrimination, looks upon the eternal Atman as his self and thinks, I am Brahman, the self and all. We said that. Shankara in the Viveka Chudamani. Deham iti eva tu yadasya buddhihi. That's the Sanskrit to it. Dehi cha jive aham vidusas dehi. Dehi is the body. See? And then beautifully, Viveka Viganavato Mahatmano, the great mind, the Mahats, and They've used what? Viveka Vijnanavato. They've used discrimination and higher wisdom to become great souls. Viveka Vijnanavato Mahatmano, and then Brahma iti eva, realized they were one Brahman. They were one with Brahman. Brahman iti eva, one. Then to Matri Sadatmani, they realized their Atman, the truth of their Atman. That's the Sanskrit to this quote. I've been memorizing it and I just found out that I have it. So basically, the dual-witted man thinks of himself as the body. That's what I was just saying. You got fooled when you came out into nature and you forgot that you planned all this. It's all at your behest that you did this. They asked Ramana Maharshi that once, is what happens, is what happens out here, is that all predestined? He said, everything that my body did here, he's talking in a very old age, so he's already in his late 70s, 80s when he said this, everything that my body did here happened before I was born. So go figure that one out. Talk about an Advaitic Sen koan. You see, everything that I did here, Ramana Maharshi is talking about his life of 7 or 8 decades. Everything I did here in this body was already done before I got here, before I was born. So this is a great realized soul. Everyone knew he was a realized soul in a contemporary time. He was more recent than Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. But there he is saying, basically, that's all been planned by the soul. I think I'll go out there and play now once I put it. It's like an inventor. Okay, I've got this invention. Now I'm going to go out and build it, you see, and see where it leads me. So that's what all the souls have done with the 5 elements, the 5 senses, the prana, the fourfold mind, and their buddhi. You know, they've all used those things to plan a life, and then they got into the body and lived it. It's called sportive play, or if it's not conscious, it's called a combination of happiness and sorrow that I lived all my life because I didn't realize that suffering was a part of it. So you're the cause of everything. Don't blame it on poor Brahman. Leave something perfect and uncaused. That's why it's called the uncaused cause. Because it's hard to describe and define, right? Basically, because all of us had a cause, and you'd like to say right afterwards, yes, of course, it's God that gave us all this. But not specifically, it isn't. It's the mind that gave you all this. And the mind was then poised in the Trinity, and the Trinity was poised back in Brahman. So it's come through a few mediums here to get here. And when it came through grosser and grosser mediums, the word became solid, became flesh. See? And then all of a sudden you've got air, earth, fire, water, and ether in their subtlemost form in the mind of the creator God, Brahman, Lord Brahma, all of a sudden manifested out here as solid things, as liquid things, see, as homogeneous things, air, as fire in the sky. Those things were all utilized by the great mind and manifested here and expressed itself that way. That's why they're called the Pancha Mahabhutas, the 5 great elements. They started off at a very, very causal level, but that's the point. They started off in a causal level in the mind of Lord Brahma. They didn't start off in Brahman. Brahman's free of them. Leave it that way. The non-dual Brahman, pure and perfect. And you'll have to move towards it. It will not come down to you, Vivekananda said. You'll have to raise yourself to it. Please don't bring Brahman down to these lower levels. It won't work. It won't work how? Same as oil and water won't mix. See, mayically, it looks like it will mix, but give it a half a minute and it immediately separates itself. That's nature and that's soul. And that's Prakriti and that's Purusha. That's consciousness and that's matter. And they don't mix, ultimately. You're there, you're consciousness, you're not matter. And you'll withdraw yourself from that matter. No mind, no matter, no matter, never mind. You'll withdraw yourself from that at some point. It's called death, but you'll have a conscious death, and you'll say, I already did all of this already in my dream before I got here. I can give it up now easily, having already done it twice. Why do we want to repeat things all the time? First, I'll dream it. Oh, that was great. Now I think I'll actually manifest it in the waking state. Then I'll go live it again. We do it twice. But you must wake up once and realize that Brahman did not cause it. It's all a play. It's all a play and it's your doing. These two have to realize this, and they're on the trail of that. See, they're on the trail of becoming, um, what's the next one? Realizing that they're the creator of the worlds. That's number 3, right? Wrong conclusion, tataksa lakshana, about Brahman being the creator of the worlds. Religion is at fault for telling you that, talking about a creator God. There's no such thing as creator God with a capital G. There's a sub-God that creates called the mind. There are little gods that create water, earth, fire, ether, air, seeing, tasting, touching, hearing, smelling. In my tradition, they're called Indriyas. Indriya means God, God of gods. But it doesn't mean Brahman, which is beyond divisions. We've already said that, right? If it's beyond transformations, then it's not turning into the gods. You can't say the gods are Brahman. You can't say your ancestors are Brahman. You can't say people are Brahman. That's why we have a very nice word in our tradition, Atman. Let's call you that because you're in training. You know, you're in training for being Brahman. But you cannot be Brahman until you realize you are Brahman. And that's what they're on the path of, Samara Sattva. That's what they're on the track of. That's what everyone wants to do at some point. Because why? Because you get rid of the dualities, and what do you get for it? You get the bliss of Brahman, right? Brahmanandam, Paramasukadam, Kevalam Jnanamurtim. You get the bliss of Brahman. So, oh, you mean we're the creators of this world? Very well said. The teacher says, yes, you created all of this. You projected it out of your own mind. And there are bigger and better and higher and more powerful minds than your mind behind you. That's called the cosmic mind, Mahat. See? So learn your Samkhya all the way back to the source, and then take that inner journey back, involution. Evolution, they gave you that, and it wasn't completely without faults either. They didn't give you prana, and they didn't give you tanmatras, um, and they didn't give you the gods, and they didn't give you anything about the ancestors except they went to some heaven somewhere up there. So they didn't really do a very good job even giving you the evolution part of this thing. India did with Lord Kapila, but the involution part now is up to you. And you're going to have to uh, avoid some of these false conclusions when you involve. Those are the ones that are, you're running across a stream and there are rocks there and you're hopping from one to one. All of a sudden, hey, there's a rock missing. You see, I can't jump from this rock to that rock. I'll get wet. I'll fall in the river. Somebody took that rock away. You know, yeah, well, that was little old me that took that rock away. And I need to put it back and know where it went to and bring it back. Like at a very high level, like I and my father are one, for instance. I mean, even great souls don't realize that till they go out in the forest. That's how thick Maya is here, that people are all running around thinking themselves to be animals. Oh, I came from an animal. As my teacher used to say, you know, if I want to see my ancestors, I have to go to the zoo. He said, that's what they're trying to convince me of, but I don't accept it. The ancestors of the Aryans, the Indian people, were back inside of the gods and back inside to Ishvara. I came from Krishna. I came from Ram. I came from lineages based in Shiva. That's my lineage, and I can trace myself back there. Creator of worlds, not Brahman. Brahman moves, contracts, and expands. That's another conclusion that we can put to rest here today. It doesn't contract and expand. Why? Because it's all pervasive. That's the best word we can think of in English for it, or words with the dashes. It basically all pervasive. It's everywhere in everything already, so it doesn't have to contract and expand. The world is doing that in space. Your mind is doing that with thinking. The lungs are doing that with breathing. Your consciousness is doing that when it goes from waking, dreaming to deep sleep. It's expanded fully out here in waking. It goes down to nothing in dreaming and even less in deep sleep. So that's all the expanding things. It's again, it's down to mind and matter, energy, and Brahman is none of those down here. So the skip one. Let's see. Brahman is mind, matter, or energy is a false conclusion. Brahman is not mind, that is, therefore it's not thought. It's not conception. It's not imagination. That should be obvious. And then it's not matter, and it's not energy. So immediately we step away from the Big Bang theory that somehow life came out of some fiery energy in an explosion in physical space, because we'll go so far back away from that that we'll understand that soul didn't come or go at all. It was all pervasive, right? Brahman's all pervasive. So you see how you can put these together. If it's not mind, energy, and matter, then I must go back to this premise that it did not create, destroy, or sustain anything. That it's one indivisible consciousness all the time. And it's only appearing to change because of my changing mind. And it's only appearing to become energy because of my breath. And it's only appearing to become objects because of my sense of touch and sense of smell and hearing. And that's all appearance. I don't want appearance anymore. I give it up. So the contraction and expansion of a thing, what is Brahman, some sort of balloon toy for a kid? No, it's divine reality. It's not even the breath that's being used to blow up the balloon, to contract and expand it. It's beyond the five elements, so it's beyond air and ether. Nobody ever took a pair of lungs into them when they got with them when they got samadhi. You left your lungs outside. You even do that in deep sleep. I didn't breathe for so long, my lungs were like unnecessary. Two flesh bags sitting there. They were only necessary when I came back into dreaming and breathed a little more. And I came back into waking and realized I was late for work. And then I started really puffing. So basically, that's matter, energy, and mind, all connected doing that, right? It's this round of matter, energy, and mind all the time. And unfortunately, it's become in this yuga restless, a matter of habitual restlessness. I mean, tamas, laziness, is not even the problem anymore. Maybe this is the real intention of Divine Mother, is that the world got so tamasic that she said, okay, it's time for a period of rajas. So now you see everyone just spinning their wheels. What are they going to get rajas for? What do they want to be restless for? God? No, sorry, not this yuga. Let's make them restless for, oh, I know, land, riches, money, fame. Yeah, let's make them restless for that. I'll dangle that like carrots in front of them. And they'll be really restless, you see. There'll be a period of rajas that will come upon them. Well, maybe that's her intention, so they'll get away from tamas. Because nothing happens in tamas. So Contracting, expanding, let's leave that to balloons and lungs, and let's leave Brahman, pure and perfect as it is. How about another great, and you do all realize, I hope, and will realize that these are false notions about divine reality. And if they're in your mind in any way, shape, or form, then these things are not going to be possible for you to get rid of. Attachment to nature, attachment to money and fame, attachment to your past karmas, and attachment to sensual pleasures and objects. Those things are going to keep persisting in you because you're still holding on to these false truths, tataksha lakshana, about the nature of reality. If you can clear the mind of those false notions, then you can see all of these transform. And these methods will start working that they're using, and will pop that bubble of samskara, will pop those bubbles of karmas, and will pierce and destroy those false relationships you have with your ancestors and make everything pure and whole again. A false religion will become true religion again in this world. The next one here, number 5, is Brahman has divisions. Well, we've already used the word all-pervasive. Probably you want to put another word with that, inseparable, or, it's just not possible to divide it because it's one pure, indivisible mass of perfect conscious awareness. And without borders, yes, but also without imperfections. I just started the class off today chanting that, right? Brahman is pure, perfect and formless, actionless, and divine. So that's how the Upanishads stated it, according to the seers who realized it, that Brahman. And then they said, well, we watched it for a long time, even lifetimes, in our meditations, in mountain caves, in forests deep, in glades of forest deep. We watched it for a long time, you see, and we found out that that was the one thing that did not change and was not causing everything. Our minds were causing it. And it was not the creator of the worlds. We ourselves were that. And it was not moving, contracting, expanding. And that was because it had no divisions within which to grow and decay. So basically, when you say divisions, you're already talking about birth, growth, decay, old age, and death, right? It doesn't go through that. Therefore, your Atman, which is one with Brahman, shouldn't have to go through that either. It's already pure and perfect. Now realize that it's that way. Identify yourself with the perfect formless Brahman and give up this idea that you're separate from it, because that's the worst division of all. That all of a sudden there's a space between me and my God. Also that it takes form. Probably could say name and form there, namarupa, but basically names can be holy and chanted a lot. So let's just go to the actual form itself, particularly the physical form, the human body, the animal, the plant, and the insect. All the forms in the Bhutakasha, in the Burloka. Bhutakasha means space, akasha of physical things, bhutas. Burloka means a realm inside of you that's made of all these bhutas, a space where these beings have a place to enact their creation of the worlds after they already conceived of them. Then they'll go into it and take forms. So that's not Brahman that's causing you to take a form. If even the avatars and Ishvara forms are telling you that, it's that I only take a form, when I'm there to help suffering beings. Then I'll take a form. And when I take it, I'll assume it. I won't identify with it. That's how Shankara says it, again, in the Vivakuchudamani. I will only assume a form. Because why? Because birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death are going to happen to every form. And why? Because suffering it has a cause, it has a, a solution, and there's an eightfold path to it. We put and I've done this before in a chart, put the Four Noble Truths side by side with those six transformations and look at Buddhism because Vedanta has the same teachings, called Sadurmi, six transformations. Brahman's not a transformation, of course. Then you put them side by side and you see how similar they are and how they work together, especially for somebody who's trying to, you know, achieve this Samara Sattva. They're trying to get this eternal equanimity that the seers have from lifetime to lifetime. Not even death will cause them to be restless or forget their true nature. So they'll come back into the form. You see, assume it. That's why I'm saying they assume it. They don't take it on as if it were real. We know this because so many millions of people think they're the body. You know, thanks for thinking that way, folks, because it shows us how deluded that is. Because when we look at the seers, they don't say that. They're not saying I'm the body. They're saying I'm not the body. And well, you're in the body, but I only assumed it. You took it on as reality. Something. So remember that these are statements that if you took them without this first sentence, it sounds like I'm talking opposite of what I mean. These are false notions that Brahman takes a form, that Brahman has divisions. And I'm saying it that way because these two are trying to get rid of those very things. And this is the manifestation of them. So when you look back on this teaching, then you're going to want to put these two charts side by side and look at that closely. Same with action. Brahman acts or takes action. That's a false reading of Brahman. It's always still, perfect, peaceful, transcendent, equanimous. That's that describes Brahman more than the problem of action and activity. We've just said how restlessness gets into people. That's the kind of action that shows that they're having this restless or rajasic mind take over their lives. We've already said Brahman is not mind, energy, or matter. So if you're equating it with, and sometimes religion seems to do that, um, calling God a creator, calling God in heaven and a place and a location, that's just kind of a way of saying that, well, God is here amongst us. But the gods may be here amongst us, but the formless reality is never here amongst us. It's behind us. When we say it's within us, that's also not really quite accurate. They say, well, the Atman is not within you. It's the backdrop of everything. What's within you are your thoughts. What's within you are the worlds. What's within you are the six chakras. And you have to transcend all of those to get Brahman. This is why we're so fortunate to have the Upanishads and those teachings of non-duality give us that highest truth. Since we're bringing up mind, energy, and matter, then we might as well bring up space and time because those are two other things which the more intellectual beings amongst us are concentrating on a lot. Brahman lies within space and time. Of course, it's transcendent. So there's another English word that we can borrow. It's transcendent of desha and kala. Those are the Sanskrit words for that. So nama, rupa, desha, kala, and what's the fifth? Nimitta, right? So that's Nama Rupa is name and form. Desha Kala is space and time. And nimitta is karma, cause and effect. Those five define Maya. And so Brahman's, of course, never in Maya. Neither should you be. And Vivekananda has said that to us. You are never in Maya. Maya is in you. So be done with it. And a beautiful saying. He wrote that in his letters to us here in the West and to his brother monks. And he had meditated upon the fivefold Maya, name, form, time, space, and karma, cause and effect. Cause, remember, we've already looked at that. Brahman can't be the cause for anything. So make these connections as you think about them. So he said, you are never in Maya. So that means you're Atman. You, Atman, Brahma, those are never in Maya. That's your true self. But you're in them still. So be done with that. Be done thinking that I'm in Maya. And the same thing would be that I'm a body in nature. So we're talking about the five senses, body, blood, semen, all the elements that consist of energy, prana, anything that moves, prana moves, right? So we can't be prana. Thought, conception, imagination, mind, we can't be that because it moves. So we're just leveling out the playing field here. Um, I was, I brought it and I wanted to flash it. Probably a good time to do that before we finish up the final three of those false conclusions, because we're on that track right now. So you see here, one of the charts that talks about us being, about Brahman being, what's that word again? Aparinama, changeless. The first misconception we took up today that these beings are trying to get rid of. Oh, I got to admit, just like I had to admit earlier, that suffering is a part of this creation and that creation is my own. I also have to admit that Brahman doesn't change. It's separate from this. It's pure and perfect, and I have to reach up inwards to it and not bring it down here and make it suffer, because Brahman doesn't suffer either. So we just talked about change and changelessness, right? And we were also then talking about time, space, energy, mind, and form and karma. So here's a chart that I won't go through entirely, but basically you can see the lines, the subdivisions here between everything. So everything below this parinama is changing. It's called parinama. What are those things? It's so many things there that I'll just tell them real quick. Maya itself is a part of parinama. That's apparent transformation. Prakriti, nature, is a part of parinama. Intelligence and knowledge, a part of parinama because it changes. Mind and will, a part of parinama because they change constantly. Brain, senses, and desire, a part of parinama because they're constantly changing. The five elements, air, earth, fire, water, and ether, a part of parinama. So all of that is well laid out in the scriptures from this line on down is parinama. It's all changing, therefore it is not Brahman. Brahman is behind it to give it its power to change, but it itself is changeless. So what are some of the things we could say uh, as unchanging? One thing, Brahman, but here's the words that's used in the scriptures. That is the Paramatman, that is the Supreme Self. Prachagatman, that is, of course, the Atman that's made of pure conscious awareness. The Antaryami, the inner ruler, eternal, seated in your heart, is always unchanging, seated in your heart. You can always rely on it. You can go to that ishtam and pour out your heart, unintended. Inside of your heart, you can pour out your own heart to the Antaryami that exists within your heart. The kutastha is also another way of saying it. It's an undivided substratum. So when we go back to this chart, we would see that chart, it's not in space and time. So therefore it transcends the five kinds of space. Bhutakasa, Pranakasha, manakasha or chitakasha, then vijnanakasha, or and then chitakasha. So chitakasha, jnanakasha, on down to chitakasha, then on down to pranakasha, on down to bhutakasha, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, all fall inside the 5 kinds of space. Yeah, I know it's a little bit daunting because we only believe in one kind of space in this benighted age called the Kali Yuga. We only believe in physical space, and it goes up forever. And it's below us too. And so, but we don't know about the space of energy, the space of thought, the space of intelligence, and the space of pure conscious awareness. So therefore, all of that is well explained here when you come to a word like kutastha. It's an undivided substratum upon which everything else rests. And that's why I said earlier, Meister Eckhart calls it the ground, foundation, of all consciousness, all existence. Another thing can be likened to a non-transforming entity is sakshi, your witness consciousness, and also the word. The word belies change because it's an eternal verity. It's always sounding itself all the time. Even when time goes away back into itself, then that word is sounding itself according to the tantras. Nobody strikes the word. It sounds itself, and it does so eternally. That was also Sri Ramakrishna's experience when he meditated on the word and merged with it. All the worlds were coming out of it. They were all dissolving back into it, and no time was passing. That's how he described the word. Beautiful, transcendent experience from the standpoint of a parinama, non-transformation. He had gone beyond, get thee behind me, all the things that transformed, no matter how alluring they might be, like intelligence, or like nature, or the various appealing things of Maya. Had gone beyond them all, like Buddha saying, "Have no hope for me forevermore. I'm gone and gone forever." That's that experience of non-duality. Let's then quickly go back, because this chart was a chart to help explain this space and time uh, misconception as we look at Tataksha Lakshana and finish it up today. Brahman is a personality or an individual. I hope that that's not a misconception that's courted by many people. I think they all hopefully can get over that one, that Brahman is not a personality and not an individual. Ishvara, or God with form, can take on a personality and become an individual, but Brahman cannot do that. It doesn't have it doesn't need to take on the ego mechanism or separation, because you relate this back to inseparable nature. It doesn't have divisions, right? So it can't divide itself into an ego. It remains undivided. No ego is possible in it. Like your deep sleep last night, no ego was possible there, was it? Did you all of a sudden wake up and said, "Oh, I'm nothing"? If you're nothing, you don't know that you're something. In deep sleep, that's what you feel. So it's the same kind of with Brahman. It doesn't all of a sudden wake up and say, "I'm an ego." It's not possible to have ego in non-dual consciousness because it's non-dual. If it were dual consciousness, the ego is possible. That's dreaming. Oh, I think I'm an ego now, you see, because now I have a subtle body and heavens to court about in. So, oh yeah, I'll be a personality here. But those kinds of things only apply in those worlds of manifestation, the worlds of creation. So, my students who are courting the Vijnanam, will look at all of these and start connecting them and think about each one separately and then connection. connect them, to see where it takes them, and make sure that no wrong conclusions can persist anymore in your mind about them, and get rid of them if they do happen to come up. They can take different forms, like in nature and in the world. Basically, these are all having to do with heaven and earth, right? And this is all having to do with beyond both heaven and earth. So we will successfully reject the idea that Brahman has a personality or an individual. If you cite Ishvara, then Ishvara has become a personality, an individual. It's taken on and assumed it. So in the same way, you're never the body, but you assumed a body. And that way, Ishvara can also assume a personality or an individual like an avatar, like all the great beings that we've seen. And people, you know, they usually go toward the personality worship. That's religion is based a lot. Conventional religion is based a lot on personality worship. But the real followers of those great beings who are so-called personalities is this wisdom. So the beings who want to court that wisdom go beyond the personality of the Jesus, go beyond the personality of Krishna, go beyond the personality of Buddha, and realize what those great beings were pointing towards, which is beyond personality, which is that Brahman, which is that Almighty Father, which is that Buddha nature, which is um, that pragyaparam, as Buddha called it. He called divine reality pragyaparam, supreme intelligence without divisions. And so the personality uh, worship keeps people from realizing those higher truths. And that's not going to be acceptable to these aspirants. They want to realize the highest truth. They want to arrive at the goal of existence with a capital E, realize their essence and be one with the Father or one with the Mother or one with Shiva and Shakti in the highest realization. And as it comes down the scope here, you can see they get more and more ridiculous, really. And basically, you could say more and more obvious that you shouldn't, people who are at all wise shouldn't be thinking that, God somehow exists in energy or in matter. They shouldn't be thinking that God is a personality. And this last one is even more obvious. They shouldn't be thinking that God is a judge, that he decrees and he decides things, that he judges people, he suffers them to pain and pleasure. Again, that's how we back up to the cause of thing and the creator of the world. So that's you that's doing that. And you can be a god too. There are a lot of great beings here on earth in the human body who were gods in their past lifetime. And like great explorers, like great dominators, like great um, um, dictators. See, so they have this power of Maya, to pull the wool over lots of people's eyes and make them believe what they're saying. That's because they did that in a previous lifetime in a more godlike form. And now they're just coming back to suffer their karmas, basically, to do the same thing on earth that they did in their previous birth and also in their previous lives as gods or demigods. Suras or asuras, that's where in Hinduism that gets explained pretty thoroughly. The gods and the demigods are suras and asuras. Uh, those also lie within. So some false notions about divine reality. Um, and at the bottom here is, yes, Dvaita mulamaho dukam nanyatashyasti besajam is the Sanskrit to this. Basically, English is the primal error of double vision causes the soul to suffer. Only that singular vision that declares that the soul is undivided, eternal, and one with Brahman will render the inner eye single again. Because consciousness is non-dual by nature, and you are the seer of that. So it's not only that you're consciousness, you're actually the seer of consciousness. The whole shooting mass exists within you. You're everything. Sarvosmi. I am all. I am all. I'm in everything. But not if you believe this, not if you suffer these. And in the meantime, until you do, you have to practice these and these, you see. And then that will render your eye single again. So the primal arrow of dual vision, Ashtavakra says here, one of the great non-dual seers of India, the primal error of dual vision causes the mind to suffer. That's dual vision means pleasure, pain, virtue, vice, life and death, uh, uh, happiness and sorrow. All of these dualities are causing you to suffer, and they don't belong to your Atman. They certainly don't belong to Brahman. So convince yourself of this and be done with them. And then sit in meditation, or let meditation sit in you, as we said, and have that experience of I and my Father are one that the great souls have touted so highly, or I am Atma Brahma, this self is Brahman. Have that experience yourself. We looked at this other quote in the earlier class, I believe. Maybe not. We're running out of time, so this is a good way to end because this is what's called the Vedanta Dindima. That's the final conclusions of Vedanta. Basically, there are kind of two of them. And I'll read the chant. To clarify the nature of divine reality, the seers declare, number one, Brahman Satya Jagad Mithya. Brahman's real, the world is false. In other words, Brahman is immutable. There's that word. And the world is ever changing. To know this is akin to freedom. So we're back up to this, no transformation, a parinama teaching that we were looking at right away. Therefore, they follow up by stating, here's number two, Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. The soul must always discriminate between the eternal and the non-eternal, so as to remain free of the delusion that change is real and Brahman is not. So these two great dindimas or statements, siddhantas, were the first things you learned pretty much or heard when you went to Vedanta circles or in this lifetime, if you're so fortunate as to go to them and skip the problems of conventional religion and the path of false gurus. You went to the Vedanta and you found out from Vivekananda that these two great sayings were the essence of it all. Brahman's real, the world's always changing. And Nitya Nitya Vastuveka, basically Nitya, the eternal, and Anitya, the non-eternal. The soul must always discriminate between the two. How is that put in our Christian tradition? We grew up in the wheat and the chaff. You must separate the wheat from the chaff. And so that's a teaching that's very ancient, but it's also fairly recent in the Christian tradition, which is a younger kid on the block than this older wisdom of India. So this class is mostly centered then upon Tataksha Lakshana, basically avoiding these false conclusions. It's a good way of helping these two, or these two helping themselves, to get this energy of realization together within their hearts and minds and point it towards those remaining challenges and impurities and problems that stand in the way of them realizing themselves to be the Atman, the true self in all beings. We'll finish up this class series next week. There's more to teach, so we'll conclude it with the fourth class next week. Om Paramanandam Paramasukram Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvaititam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamashadilaksham Ekam Nityam Bivalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tanamami. We salute the leader of our souls, through whose grace our ignorance is dispelled, who's beyond good and bad, pleasure and pain, life and death, and all other pairs of opposites. We recognize that one is the only witness to the changing phenomena of this universe. May we, through that grace, go beyond darkness and delusion and realize the truth in this very life. Om, peace, peace, peace. Peace be unto us, peace be unto all. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat.